pandemic, but we don't call it pandemic no more. Even though the pandemic is still going, but we took that name off of it. It's simply 24/7 watch, because Lord willing, we're going to do this when nobody's even thinking about this pandemic anymore. We're going to keep doing this. So that's why we've been kind of took that tag off of it. And even if you don't know, hey, the pandemic winding down, it can't last forever. It can't last forever. I was going to do the lesson last week. I mentioned when we was up here, me and Brother Nate, about history repeats itself. That sounds terrible. About how history repeats itself. And so I'll probably do that still tomorrow. We got something else to deal with tonight, another makeup lesson. But when you understand history, brothers and sisters, you know that there's nothing new under the sun. And the things that have been are the things that will be. And even if you can look in the Bible at all kind of examples, but even if you don't believe the Bible, if you're one of those people who don't believe the Bible, you can look at world history and you can still see how there's nothing new. And once you understand that, and you start to look back at things that have happened in the past, you kind of can know how things gonna happen in the future. You know, so the best example we got for this pandemic that we've been experiencing for the last 21 months is, of course, 100 years ago, the Spanish flu. It's called the Spanish flu not because it originated in Spain, but because Spain were the ones reporting about it, talking about it, acknowledging it before anybody else. And if you look at that, that lasted approximately 3 years, from 1918 to 1920. And it phased out. What phased out? The pandemic phased out. Did the flu just disappear? Influenza virus, H1N1, did that just disappear off the map totally? No, it didn't disappear off the map totally, but it was no longer worthy to be rated as a pandemic. And that goes either way, whether you believe they planned it and it's a plandemic, as some people call it, I tend to agree, or whether it's just naturally happened, which I don't think too many people believe that. Either way, it's a disease, been killing people more than the norm, and we know how it's going to end. So, looking back at 100 years ago, it went from 1918 to 1920. 1920, they started taking the masks off. They basically declared it was over with. And one of the reasons, like this, what you see with this Omicron, one of the reasons they was able to declare, Brother Nate, is because they basically said, well, everybody pretty much got it. Right. They said 550 million, at least low estimate, 50 million people died from 1918 to 1920. And this one still haven't reached that. I don't know what the numbers they saying are now. We can look them up. But this haven't reached 50 million worldwide. And that was a low estimate from 1918 to 1920. And the world was a lot smaller then. But 50 million people died, and at least a quarter of the globe received it, caught that virus, and again it phased out. And I mind you, the pandemic ended even without a vaccine. They did not have a vaccine in 1920. And none of they came up with vaccines in the 40s. So they didn't have a vaccine in 1920s or 1930s. But yet, that pandemic, the influenza virus, phased out in 1920. It phased out. Now, do people still catch the flu? Of course they do. People still die of the flu every year. Matter of fact, I read an article recently. They said the flu making a resurgence because they weren't talking about it last year. Go figure that. They weren't talking about it last year. So it's resurging now, but it didn't go nowhere last year. It couldn't go nowhere. Where once and that goes back to knowing the Lord is in control, and we're gonna kick it off where we always do. Get into this right quick. In Matthew 24 verse 7, the 24/7 watch. It goes back to where we always end up at, and that is that the Lord is in total control of this thing. Everything. He's in total control of it. So nothing can happen, nothing is going on without the Lord say so. So that one phased out. This one is going to phase out. But we still, Lord willing, we'll still be doing 24/7. Why? Because we need to pay attention to all the signs, not just this one sign, this pandemic, because this is not it. It's a whole lot of other things, and that's what Matthew 24 verse 7 said, the reason why we call this 24/7 watch. Go ahead, Brother Nate. Matthew 24 verse 7. Let's get into it. Go ahead.
For a nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, and pestilence, and earthquakes in divers places.
See, and there you go. This says it all, brothers and sisters. It sums it up superbly, and on the bad, negative things that were foretold to go on in our times, and we see them. What he said, nation, because they asked Jesus at verse 3, what would be the sign of his second coming, of his coming and the end of the world? And he proceeded to give them signs. First sign is, of course, false doctrine, false prophets, misleading people, even talking about Jesus and still misleading people. You don't have no shortage of them nowadays. Plenty preachers. And we focus on the main thing, the main MO of a false prophet. They're not going to tell you what the Lord said. And they main teaching, false teaching, is that you don't have to do anything. Jesus did it all. That's detrimental. Because if you don't know you got works to do, brothers and sisters, like we stress all the time, you're in trouble.
Right.
You need to figure that out. And you got some preachers, they will say, oh yeah, because some preachers will tell people, talk about hell, say it's a chance that people can go to hell. But the average won't. And those that will mention hell, they don't really have the accurate criteria for what the Lord is saying he's putting people in hell or allowing people to enter into his kingdom. They're not dealing with the accurate criteria. How do I know they're not dealing with the accurate criteria? Because they're doing away with the law. So how you trying to tell me, well, somebody's in hell? Nobody is in hell fire. Now, we had a lesson on that recently. Nobody is in that hell. You could be hell the grave. You could be going through hell right now. But you ain't in everlasting fire, because that's not operable right now. But nevertheless, so knowing that nobody has achieved that, but it doesn't mean nobody hasn't earned that reward and, will get it at the time appointed. People have earned that reward. There will be some people in hell, fire, everlasting fire. But I know they're not dealing with the criteria, because they've said the law is done away with. You don't have to keep the commandments. The average preacher, even the average preacher that will try to they might put somebody that molested somebody. Well, they was a molester, or they raped people, they was a abuser, they did all this. I know they should be in hell. Well, maybe. But what's the criteria? It's not just molesting and beating on somebody. It's the law.
Right.
That's what the criteria is. So if you not preaching obedience to God's holy law written in this Bible, you're leading people astray. And that's why Jesus said it. Matter of fact, just read it, Brother Nate, where they asked the question at verse 3, and then he gave the answer. Matthew 24 and verse 3. Go ahead.
And he sat upon the Mount of Olives. The disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world?
The sign of your coming and the end of the world. They asked him point blank because they understood, okay, this is deeper than we thought. We thought you was going to finish it now. It's deeper. He said, no, this stuff going to get torn down. Won't be one stone left upon another. Won't be torn down. It's all going to get destroyed. Then I got to come back and fix it all. I got to come back again. So they said, okay, tell us. They asked him privately, what's going to be the sign? When shall these things be? The destruction of Jerusalem happened in 70 AD. This was 40 years prior. They asked him the question. So, but then they went further because they asked a dual question. And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? What's going to be that? Sign of that. And Jesus answered, what in verse 4?
And Jesus answered and said unto them, take heed that no man deceive you.
First thing, beware of deception. Because it's running rampant in the last days. And here we are. Look at all the churches and all the lack of knowledge in the church. Go ahead.
5. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many.
That lets you know they coming preaching Jesus, coming in his name. And they are still deceiving many. He going to say it again. Read verse 11, Brother Nate.
And many false prophets shall arise, and shall deceive many.
Sign of the times. What? Many false prophets. If you go into some church and you never considered that the man is a false prophet, it's likely you listen to one, being that it's many. You haven't even took time to decipher whether or not there's such a thing as a false prophet, let alone whether the one you listening to is one. So with this type of intel from Jesus, 9 out of 10, you got you one. Because he said it. He said, many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. That's terrible. That's a great sign, though. This is one of the biggest signs of the time, and it has nothing to do with pandemics, with wars and killing. It has nothing to do with that. It has something to do with killing those spirits, the worst killing of them all. That's why this is at the top of the list. And many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. But what's the other stuff we got to worry about? Back up to verse 6 and pick it up there.
And ye shall hear wars and rumors of wars.
And you're going to hear wars and rumors of wars. So it's not just one thing we got to worry about. It's a conglomerate of things going on bad in this world in the last days, starting with false prophets. Now, on the physical note, wars and rumors of wars. That's even been going on during the pandemic. Yeah. Even been going on. Like I was looking at some history recently and found out we know we were keeping the Feast of Pentecost in 2020. In the midst, during the lockdown, we kept the feast. We had hundreds of people here keeping the feast. We were outside, but still, yeah, we kept the feast with hundreds of people. You know, that's why I thank God that during the lockdown, when we was still meeting, having our holy convocation, then nobody died, nothing happened to nobody, because they would have definitely been saying, look at that, see, that's because they broke the law. They should have been keeping the law. No, we kept God's law. That's what we kept. We kept God's law. But anyway, we was keeping the Pentecost. That was, and they was trying to open things back up at that time, because I think that was the end of May 2020. But while we were keeping that Pentecost, we were back in the back here. It was like a utopia, one of the most joyous feasts I've ever kept. It was during lockdown, during the pandemic, and it was rioting going on, and we didn't even know. People started looking at their phones. We enjoying ourselves so well. People said, yeah, it's rioting out there. It's rioting. They, you know, right outside Chicago, they had tore the mall up, River Oaks Mall. And so the crazy thing about that is that wasn't the first time something like that happened. I was looking at some history during the last great pandemic, 1919. Chicago is known as the place where riots initiated in 1919 because they killed a boy on the lakefront. Killed a black boy on the lakefront. He drifted too far across the line where black and white were supposed to be at in Chicago, on the lakefront around 29th Street. And it started a full-fledged riot, and that was during that pandemic, and it spread from Chicago to a lot of other cities, just like this one did. We started in Minneapolis this time with George Floyd, and that's what was going on in 2020. But it was going on in 1919. The exact same thing. Riots all over the place. Look it up. So my point is, one thing, one drama, according to the Lord, ain't going to stop other dramas from still taking place. That's what you got to pay attention to. So that's what he said. He said, you're going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Then read 7 again.
For nation shall rise against nation.
Nation shall rise against nation. That's one bad aspect, but what else?
And kingdom against kingdom.
Uh-huh.
And there should be famines.
Famines. Go ahead.
And pestilence.
Pestilence. That's pandemics. That's diseases. Go ahead.
And earthquakes.
And earthquakes. All of these killers. Killing people more than the norm. You're going to die anyway.
Right.
But now it's more than the norm. This is a sign of the time. But you can't put all your eggs in one basket. In other words, you can't put all, if you're going to worry, you really need to trust the Lord instead of worry. Put your faith in him. But if you're going to worry, you don't even need to just worry about one thing. This is how we know this pandemic going to come to a close, brothers and sisters. It got to, because too much other stuff, bad stuff even got to happen. It's going to be some more good time. Don't worry. Y'all going to get out there and have a good time again. You better figure out how to find out about the Lord and serve him, though. That's what you better figure out. Nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, pestilence, earthquakes in divers places. What is that, Brother Nate, verse 8?
All these are the beginning of sorrow.
That's the beginning of this madness. That's the beginning of the madness. But now, so you probably looked it up. How many deaths we got? Oh, somebody text me.
Did they give it to you?
Yeah, 5.43 million deaths. So almost 5.5 million deaths in this pandemic that has went on. Basically started around here. We'll take it back to 19, but here it started in 2020. We got notable. But even we take it back to 2019, I'm sorry, because it's COVID-19. That's what, 5.5 million deaths. Versus, somebody was trying to argue with some numbers saying, see, it didn't reach more. They want this to be worse than the one in 1919. I don't know why you want it to be worse. It's probably, better that it's not. But they want this to be so bad. And unfortunately for them, hasn't proven to be as bad as that one in 1919, 1918. Because in that span, a low estimate is 50 million, not 5, 50 million people. So I'm pretty sure that 5 million is worldwide. I'm going to make sure when I get a chance, but I'm pretty sure it's 5.43 million deaths worldwide. I'm pretty sure that's what it is, because it hadn't been escalating like that. Even with this Omicron, they making it plain. That's what it say, yep. So they said 286 million cases so far worldwide. 286 million cases. And even in America, how many deaths? They only got 800-something thousand. They haven't gotten 1 million deaths in America, but 800-something thousand. America, of course, got more than anybody else. But 286 million cases. And like I said, even in 1918 to 1920, it was 500 million cases. That's when they declared the pandemic was over. And that's probably what's going to happen with this Omicron, because everybody catching this. Everybody catching it. Everybody getting that little bug, experiencing for a few days. The majority of people that I've known and read about, hey, a few days and it's over with. So we looking at the same thing, but that's understanding that history repeat itself, which we're going to touch on that a little more in depth tomorrow. But we ain't going to be too long, Brother Nate. I'm going to go to, since we're here in Matthew 24, let's look at something. Because one piece, we talked about false prophets. Let's skip down to verse 29. Because all this leads to Jesus coming. And that's what you got to keep your eyes on the prize. We waiting on Jesus to come. This ain't, this is not going to be the end of the world. None of this. The end of the world is when Jesus comes. Then he going to make the world brand new in righteousness. He going to restart the world like he did with Noah. But it's going to be under righteousness. His holy, heavenly kingdom is going to be established right here on the earth. So that's the plan. So if you keep focused on the prize, on the plan, you won't let this little lightweight stuff going on now knock you off your square, because that's what it's designed to do. And people are getting knocked off. People that even know the Lord, because it's no preferential treatment just because you know the Lord. Matter of fact, you in more jeopardy because you know the Lord. And that's why the Lord tells you to endure or overcome. So people that know the Lord, hey, I seen people struggling. And it's meant to make you struggle. I mean, it's hard times. This is the worst time the world has seen in a long, long time. But it's going to get a lot worse. But so don't fall victim to what the game plan is. And that is, it's a test that you have to overcome. So don't get weak and throw the towel in, because there is a reward at the end of the road. And that's the Lord coming and taking over this mad world, this crazy world. So this is where we're going to end up at, but I want to touch on something that, since we mentioned false prophets, one of the main false doctrines concerning the end. Go ahead, Brother Nate, verse 29.
Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light.
Go ahead.
And the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And there shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory.
Okay, so he got to come. Remember, verse 3, they asked him what was going to be the sign of his coming and the end of the world. So eventually got to come. And I hear some Israelites, bro, they're getting away from this. They're not waiting on this. Because again, that's why Jesus tells you, you can get weary with waiting on him. You can get tired of doing his will. You can get tired of keeping the Sabbath day if you know to keep it. If you don't know to keep it, you need to learn. But you can get tired of keeping the Sabbath day. You can get tired, it can feel restrictive instead of a release and a rest. It can start to feel burdens. And the Lord warned you that. Read Luke 12, where he warned you about that servant that say the Lord is delaying his coming. That means, you won't just say it, well, I'm tired of waiting on the Lord. But that'll be your end result. Your actions will show you tired of waiting on the Lord, because you will start getting caught up in the world. You'll start doing what people are doing in the world. That is the whole goal. Don't get caught up in what everybody else is doing, because this madness, this mess is going to end. And if you didn't learn anything from this pandemic, you should know that this world is not all that it's cracked up to be. That this is, this ain't going to end good. A lot of people could see that a little better now that we've had this pandemic. Hey, this is not going to end good. So you need God, the God of this Bible, more than ever at a time like this. So it's going to end with the Lord coming, but it's going to be worse times than what we're experiencing now, because he said immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun going to get dark, the moon not going to give a light, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then you're going to see the Lord coming. The powers of the heavens shall be shaken, and then the sign of the Lord is going to appear in the sky. Because he's going to literally roll the sky back. And he's going to be in the clouds, he said. The sign of the Son of Man in heaven is going to appear. Then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn. They're going to be worried, shook. And they're going to see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Guarantee you, if you live to see this coming, every other problem in your life will become very minute when you see this happen. Because this gonna be the biggest thing, the biggest thing. Like they got a movie, people talking about it on Netflix. I don't know if you saw it.
Don't Look Up.
Don't Look Up. Yeah, they got that movie. Don't Look Up. It's a pretty good movie. And what I got out of that movie is again how it's true to form how the propaganda machine will be running rampant, saying one thing. It's just politics across the board instead of dealing with the reality of things. So that's what the one thing you definitely see in that movie. But they was using, of course, an asteroid or whatever. What was it? A comet. Comet gonna hit the earth, and that's probably what they're gonna be saying Jesus is as it's leading up to, and as he's coming, it's some type of comet, because they ain't gonna. But the Bible telling you what it is. And how we claim to believe in the Bible but don't believe in this.
Right.
It's telling you the world going in. How many people talking about it? Especially people, I'm talking about, hey, all our leaders, politicians, preachers, they got some kind of sense. They know how to read. Why they can't read this? If you got president of this country, if they take the Bible, if they swear in on the Bible, if they say God bless America, if they refer to the God of this Bible, why don't you read this and understand what Jesus, the one that a lot of people claim to believe, is going to do in the end? Verse 30 says, then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn. Why they mourning? Because they going to see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. That's how this thing go in. And this wasn't meant to be pretty. But notice, take note, it's after tribulation. Because one thing we want to dispel right quick, and I'm going to turn over to Brother Nate, is that there is no rapture. Because that's one of the biggest lies concerning the last days that these false preachers, false ministers have given us. A rapture, a secret rapture before tribulation. Well, there's no secret about this. All the tribes of the earth, everybody see him and say they're going to see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Go ahead and read 31.
And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet.
He going to send his angels. Got angels involved in this thing. Trumpet is blowing. Go ahead.
And they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other.
And especially if you're among this elect that's being gathered, the elect is Israel. That's where it always starts with. But other people can be a part. But if you among this elect, whatever issues you had, whatever problems you had, they will be all over. It's about to be good. He said he going to send his angel with great sound and trumpet, God gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. But back up to verse 15, and let's see what started this trouble off, this terrible trouble that we haven't got to yet, and then take it back down. Verse 15, Brother Nate.
When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand.
When you see that abomination of desolation, man moved to a holy temple in Jerusalem. In short, it's time to get the move. This is what's going to kick off the worst time ever. Haven't seen nothing with this. This pandemic is nothing compared to this. You talking about murder, death, kill worldwide. Right. The abomination of desolation stand in the holy place. That's why he say, when you see that, it's time to flee. At verse 16, then let them which be in Judea flee to the mountains. But now, let's skip down to verse 21. Why is it so urgent? Go ahead.
For then shall be great tribulation.
Oh, that's what's going to start the great tribulation. The abomination of desolation. Verse 15, everything carried from there. Carry it over all the way down to verse 21. Then shall be great tribulation. When? When you see the abomination of desolation stand in the holy place that Daniel spoke about. That's why it's time to flee, time to be urgent, time to pray. You better hope your flight not in the winter and on the Sabbath day, all of that good stuff. For then shall be great tribulation such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor that ever shall be. Worst time ever or will ever be. Only one time like that. Daniel told you about it. Jesus referred you to him. Then shall be great tribulation, Let's see how bad it'll get. 22.
And except those days should be short, there should no flesh be saved.
See, we living where we can all get killed. And if the Lord don't come, if Jesus don't roll the sky back, when he roll the sky back and come down, he'll kill us all. Man will kill us all. For except those days should be short, there should no flesh be saved. But once again, what?
But for the elect's sake, those days shall be short.
But for the elect's sake, those days should be short. Now, keep in mind, he said at 21, there should be great tribulation, such will not sense the world. Now, verse 29, we just read immediately after the tribulation. So Jesus is clearly putting an end to the tribulation. See, the rapture theory is a lie that Jesus is going to come prior to tribulation and take people to heaven. Let's go to the scripture that they used. Well, matter of fact, read 29 one more time. I'm going to get this out the way. Go ahead.
Immediately after tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven.
Immediately after the tribulation, all this going to happen. And the stars shall fall from heaven, and what else?
And the powers of the heavens shall be shaken.
Okay, so but the key is at verse 29. Everything we're reading about from here on is after tribulation. That's when the Lord. What I want to read here before we move on, go to verse, skip down to verse 36 and read that.
But of that day and hour knoweth no man.
Now we don't know the